If you have a multi-res, set the level viewport to maximum on your object. First we are exporting the low poly version. File, export FBX. You can use the normal FBX export settings, tick selected object, change smoothing to face, and untick apply modifiers, and also animations. Name it for example low res, hit export. Now let's do this again. Everything is the same, but this time we are going to leave the apply modifiers on. Then we are going to name it, export it, and wait till it finishes. Be patient, it can take a while. You have to have your character unwrapped with no overlaps. Overlaps might generate errors in Substance. Generally ignores embedded textures in FBX files, so it doesn't matter if you have a bunch of fake textures or any other textures in your materials. Additional important stuff, unfortunately, size matters. The most important thing is that the scale has to be applied before exporting. Character dimensions will only determine the tiling process, so it will not influence that much. And you can fully ignore unit scale in this case. So to get the best out of Substance, it's to use a high resolution mesh and a low resolution mesh. This will give you all the necessary data for all of our fancy maps that we will need. So we will start with that. So now we are in Substance Painter, let's create a new one. First we see these templates. In Substance Painter, these are starting points that set up your project with predefined shaders, channels, and settings for specific workflows. So now our low poly mesh. Select our document resolution. We don't need to change anything else. The second workflow we will use these imported bake maps. But now we want to bake it from the actual high resolution mesh, so we will skip this one. We will get back to it. We don't need to change anything here as well, we can just press OK. Now we need to press this cross on kind of thing for baking, because otherwise our applied textures will not work properly. First thing we see is this window. So as you can see, we are in common settings. So here we can change our output size to, for example, 4K, but we can change it later on. First thing is dilation width. If set to higher via the color from the UV edges, spread further, reducing the risk of visible seams. And the texture is compressed using bitmaps, for example, in Unreal. Next is apply diffusion. With this you can avoid hard, sharp surface edges in the ambient occlusion or the thickness map. If you don't have a normal map, neither does a high resolution mesh, then you should tick this in. But I have a high resolution mesh, so I'm just going to click on this icon and import it. Here we can use our own existing cage file if we have one, but the program automatically creates us a virtual cage, which we can control with the max frontal distance and the max rear distance if we want to change it. Another important option is anti-aliasing. It's going to improve the quality, going to reduce the noise on the baked map. However, later in the maps I'm going to show you that we can actually almost eliminate the need of anti-aliasing. And I don't want you to know this, but prefixes and suffixes are absolutely not necessary at all to use, so we can just delete these, since Substance will automatically match its object by name. So if your two objects are the same name, which is highly likely, then it will just work fine. Normal, it's self-explanatory. We need this ticked whenever we have a high poly mesh like I do here, or when you want to bake directly from a low poly version. The only case where we don't need it is when we have an already baked normal map, but I will show you that later in the video at the second method. Word space normals doesn't require any adjustment. Think of it like it's a snow layer. It shows where snow would naturally settle on your character if it were snowing. ID. It's referring to a color ID. They are like predefined masks for an object. There is a few options like this vertex group. We don't have a vertex group on this one, since I didn't really need it right now. It's really great when you have multiple objects with different names, but for example, with one material. So you can just drag and drop textures to it. But I'm just going to quickly show you how to set up an ID map inside Blender. So in Blender, select your object, go to Data tab, and look for color attributes. Click on the plus icon. You can name it whatever you want. Then go to Edit mode, select the parts you want to mask on, and go to Vertex Paint, select the color, and paint it. Go to Edit mode, select another region. In my case, it's the mouth cavity. Again, Vertex group, select different color, and just like before, paint it. And it's done. Just heads up, if you add another, it will act just like UV maps, so only one can be active. Look out for that. And there is a little bug that if you stay in vertex group mode and try to select the other version, it won't let you. To fix that, just go to object mode and again to vertex group, and it should all work. And this is how it would look if you select vertex. But in case of multiple objects, at color space select mesh ID polygroup, and the color generator pick random. What this would do is just simply generate random color for each of your objects. Next up is ambient occlusion. Using secondary rays and cranking up to the maximum can reduce or even eliminate the need of anti-aliasing. However, a very high ray count increases bake times significantly. Just watch out for that. I would suggest to only increase the rays when you see noise or uneven shadowings in the bake. Otherwise, just leave the default 64. You can tweak these values as well. Increase minimum to reduce shadowing and avoid over-darkening small details. Increase maximum to capture softer shadows for a more ambient effect. You can leave the distribution as is, select face to never, set the self-occlusion to only same mesh name, so the shadow will only affect the exact mesh. You can even add the ground plane, which would act like a floor underneath the object, but I'm not really seeing when this could be useful, so I never really use that. Next up, curvature. Since we have a high poly mesh, we can select generate from mesh. If you would have the already baked normal map, then we could select generate from normal map, but we are going to stick with generate from mesh. Higher rays are good for smoothing out shapes, but it can blur out fine details, which we really don't want here. Use a lower ray count to emphasize sharper edges. The position you can leave it like that. It will give us a gradient that later can be used as a kind of a dirt layer from the ground up. But I usually end up using it always inverted. So next, thickness is really great for subsurface and roughness materials. I'm going to show you how to use it in this video. Secondary rays here again can increase the details. Select self-occlusion only save mesh name. Next up is height maps. You really should turn this on because bake maps like normal map and AOA still work, but they won't capture the same depth or fine details that a height map can. Height map is not used for masking tool, instead it just improves the realism of the normal and AO maps with actual height-based information. Band normals are great as well. It can enhance ambient occlusion map, but it will need a separate setup for it that I will show you in a second. Opacity map, well, I'm not really using this one. It's supposed to increase the quality of the transparent areas. You can use transparent textures anyway without this. Okay, then we are just going to hit bake selected textures and wait for interpreting. Second method, then we are going to do all the same process. Everything is going to be the same, except we are going to import the already existing normal map. So when you hit OK, be aware that the normal map is not selected automatically for your character. You have to go under texture set settings, select normal map, and now our mesh should update. Okay, let's go to the baking section. The only big difference is that under common settings, obviously we are not going to import high poly mesh and we have to uncheck normals. This would happen if you don't. Also a quick tip, if your viewport is freezes up or it slows down, you should go to edit, settings, and uncheck these two. Enable live preview and enable GPU ray tracing. If you uncheck these two, then you won't see the baking process and your computer will be way much faster. Well, not particularly faster, but it's not going to freeze up. In order to activate the band normals, we'll need to go to the shaders tab right here. You can choose a preset from this drop-down menu, but the main two ones I use are this one, the alpha banding, and the PBR metal rock. If you select it, we can go down. You might not see this opacity because I already added this one. So now we can check in band normal, and as you can see, something is changing. So if I change the diffuse amount, you can see that it is smooths it out. So this is how you enable band normals. To set up subsurface scattering, you need to go to texture settings, and here under channels you should add another one. And now here we are looking for scattering. Click on that, and now down below you can see that we have a scatter map. Now we can go to shader settings, and if you're not seeing what I see, just make sure that you are on metal rough. I'm just going to show you that for a different preset, subsurface scattering will be not available. As you can see in the alpha blending, it's not there, so that's why we need to change it back, and now we can enable it. I'm just going to drag and drop our skin texture. As you can see, right from the get-go we are getting something. You can play with the values here, but I would say the best way is to just export the thickness map in the end of your process, then manually adjust it inside Blender, because we cannot modify the actual thickness map here. But we can get a preview how it would look like. You can select the scattering type scheme. I'm just going to quickly fix this tiling issue. And now as you can see, it's perfectly matching with our thickness map. So that's it for the baking part. As you can see, this demonstrates why I emphasize using the first method. For anyone interested in additional info, baking a curvature map after an ambient occlusion map or vice versa doesn't improve the quality of either. These maps are always dependent on the normal map or the high poly mesh. The timing doesn't matter, you can always bake additional maps later if you forget one. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this tutorial was helpful and see you in the next one.